Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I am super excited, jazzed, over the moon, some might say, for my next guest, an artist, an illustrator of children's books, and a portrait artist for the Talk Easy pod with Sam Fragoso, which is a weekly series of intimate conversations with artists, activists, and politicians, where people sound like people. And my guest there, Krishna Shenoi. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rob, what's up?
Thank you for making the time. Thank you for coming on. And I mean, I feel like in some ways, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I feel like I'm underqualified for this conversation a little bit. I mean, I see, the work that's going out, and I'm like, your work is fire, for one. So it's really great work. And two, I'm just happy that we're able to kind of chat and talk a little bit about your work and about your process and all. So I'm looking forward to learning more.
If anyone feels underqualified, it's me, because I'm usually a person who just makes images and puts them out there. I haven't done a lot of talking about it. So yeah, I feel underqualified as well. So yeah, it's cool.
We're shared in that, right?
Yeah.
So if you will, to start off, I like to kind of lay the foundation on the guests' origin, their background and things of the sort. So can you give us some insight on your background and share with us your first experience with art?
My background, I was born in Bangalore and raised between Sharjah and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And I think my first experience with art must have been it's either my mother introducing me to the films that her brother introduced her to when she was a child.
Sure.
But it must have been the picture books that we had at my home. It's some combination of these two. I have nebulous memories of just being introduced first to the idea of art.
Yeah.
Just art that already existed.
Yeah.
And then over time realizing, hey, wait, someone made this. And that was that was the next level thought, where it was wait a second, I have these two books and they were both made by the same person. Because I see the same name here, It sounds self-evident now, but as a kid at the time, that leap was the big leap. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So talk about a little bit of your sort of educational background, what goes into it? Because I see artist, I see illustrator, I see portrait artist, a lot of different things. So talk about some of the skills that you've learned that are a part of your work and part of your process.
So I did my high schooling in the Gulf, in the United Arab Emirates, and I was actually supposed to be a doctor. That's what most Indian parents would want their child to do, because it's a secure profession, and So I studied science in high school actually for 2 years. That wouldn't have been my first choice, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to. I mean, I knew I wanted to do filmmaking, but that's not a legitimate track according to understandably, because it's not like we had family members who had done it or anything. There was no precedent for it,
Gotcha.
So yeah, so then during high school, I think I realized I didn't want to be a doctor. It was going to be too hard. Could I do something a little closer to the creative side of things that I want to pursue? And so then my parents were like, okay, fine, engineering. And then that got downgraded to architect. And finally, after a lot, that was architect, they said, was a compromise between artist and engineer, Yeah. So then finally they were like, okay, fine, you can do this art thing, go to art school. A lot of stuff had to happen to convince them, but at the end they were actually convinced, that I was serious about this, because And so then I went to this college in Bangalore called Srishti, where I did 4 years of this kind of mixed education, which and it was in this college where I had the space to dabble in different media. I went in wanting to do film, and when I was there, I could also explore illustration and 2D animation, and I discovered like just like I didn't even think that I would be doing like children's picture books, but I did a course over there. And that's when I realized, hey, I like doing picture books because I can explore all these things with visual media that I like to do,
Hmm.
um, without like having to be answerable to a producer and market research and all these things, which really put me off about like the direction that the film industry was going down and is still going down. So yeah, sorry, I just rambled.
No, 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 no. I think that
Yeah,
that gives good context because like kind of understanding that, doctor, then kind of like, well, not doctor's not going to work out. All right, let's go
yeah,
into like engineering. Engineering's not quite. Architect. It's like, all right, the creative
yeah,
thing was calling you. I think, and
yeah.
that's a real consideration. Like when I was younger, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be in robotics, but
Mhm.
when I was a kid, I was drawing. I was drawing comics and things of that nature, and it was kind of this push from my parents of this is going to be a reputable thing. You're going to make money from this. This is a real job, and do the creative stuff. It's a little fun side project, but the creative stuff
Yeah,
had my interest.
yeah.
So I read this quote, from you that a good storybook can start a spark in a child's mind and send them on a way to who knows where. And that you want to take young people to places. That's inspirational. That is, inspires wonder. Do you have like a life experience where you've gone on one of these sort of like journeys creatively and kind of where it's taken you, as an artist, an experience that kind of shaped you as an artist and as a person?
Could you expand on that a bit? I'm not sure exactly what track to go down here.
Sure. I was, so there are instances where I think, people might explore. Like sometimes it may be through travel, it may be through working with someone who's a collaborator, and it opens you up to so many different things and seeing how far art can take you or how far certain opportunity can take you. And I kind of taking from that quote that you had, like, I think what I take from the quote is, it inspires folks to explore and to, you want to help be a part of that process through, a good storybook for sake of argument for a child. So tell me about a
Yeah.
time where you were able to kind of explore what have you, and creatively.
Well, so in I think around the fifth grade or so,
Yeah.
I had a I think we had an excerpt from Gulliver's Travels in English literature. And so we're just studying about like, Gulliver's encountering the Lilliputians and all of the stuff, like the little people.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. This is fun. I went with my mom to the supermarket and there was a film in the discount bin called The Three Worlds of Gulliver. So I just bought it because it was like super cheap. And because I was studying it in literature, I ended up seeing it in the store. And because it was cheap, we bought it. And because I bought it, I watched it. And because I watched it, I loved it. And because I loved it, I saw the making of on the
Mm.
DVD. And that's when I discovered Ray Harryhausen, the stop motion animator. And in that documentary, he talked about how when he was a kid, he would shoot animation himself in his garage using this technique called stop motion animation.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. I want to try that. Um, and yeah, so I'm not sure if it's like, I wouldn't attribute this whole journey to Gulliver's Travels, the text, exactly. So I'm not sure if it answers the question.
No,
But
that helps.
I was
That
just
helps.
trying to think of like a life experience which, like, when I look back, I feel like if any one of those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have like fallen down the Ray Harryhausen rabbit hole as a child, which kind of like unlocked this whole side of like my creative life as a person, or just making films with VCR camcorder, VHS camcorder. Sorry, yeah.
No, that's great, and that's actually what I was looking for there. I
Right.
I think using this podcast and this platform, it allows me to kind of like talk to a lot of interesting folks. And I think with it, people like to share. They like to share the things that they're interested in, what they're reading, what they're watching, what they're making. And that is almost an invitation to travel in a sense of, all right, this person likes this artist. Oh, I like this person. I like their art. Let me check and dive in a Gulliver Travel sort of way into their work a little bit more. And it pops up over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. I feel like in this internet age where we can like hear each other's like interior thoughts and just like you and I are having this conversation and like people are going to be listening to it, like it kind of like erases like barriers that used to exist earlier, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and one of the things that really is cool that comes out of it, it's an exchange, you know, is.
That's a more succinct way of saying what I was trying to say. Yeah.
and I think it's really cool. Like, you know, I was interviewing a guest earlier before you and I got on, and you know, we were talking, we were almost making plans. I was like, man, I'm going to be up there this day, and we're going to do this. We're going to get a drink, and you know, we're just going to connect. You're going to show me the gallery, and it's just what it could be, you know. And before that sort of conversation, I may not even thought of it. You never know how these conversations might go, you know. And
for sure.
That's part of it. That's part of it for me. So what do you do to get into a sort of creative mindset, right? When you're approaching work, and I'll add this extra texture to it. So I recently started a new training regimen, exercise regimen, and they talk about stretching and activating your muscle groups and before going into some of these exercises. And I think creativity and that sort of mindset is very similar. You have to be ready to create. You have to get into that mindset. And, you know, some people have writer's block and creative burnout and things of that sort. So in thinking of sort of this creative mindset and getting primed to create, what do you do to enter sort of that creative mind state? Like what do you need to be ready to create?
In many ways, like this is something that I'm still working on because I have like huge like starting trouble, especially with projects that I find like challenging or overwhelming. Like if something has like one challenge, then I can like work with that. But if something has like 6 challenges, I just have like a huge like issue just sitting down and like hitting those challenges. So I used to do things like I used to read about this stuff. I used to listen to podcasts where they would talk about creative struggles, and that would kind of make me feel like, you know, like, yeah, this is relatable. Everyone goes through this. And like some tips I heard were like, you know, listen to music that inspires you or watch something that inspires you. But I think what I've realized is for me personally, the only thing I can do is just sit down and start. And once I push past those like those very shaky first 15 minutes, once I get some kind of momentum going, it just happens. Like I realize that half the time that I'm stuck, it's just because I didn't push for 15 minutes. And if I'm pushing for 15 minutes and it's still not happening, then it's maybe just not my day. Maybe I'll start again tomorrow. But in terms of like a stretch or a warm up before an exercise, the one thing that seems to work for me is, let's say I wasted the whole day not starting.
Right.
Just spend 30 minutes before going to bed, just writing down some stuff and doing some kind of prep work. This helps me like enormously, because the next morning I wake up and I feel like, oh fuck, I have all this. Oh, sorry, can I swear?
You're good. You're good.
Yeah. So I wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh God, I have like, I don't know how to approach this thing, but I have like a few notes here and I've done some kind of mental prep work, you know? That doing it the night before helps because it feels like I've slept on it, and I can start fresh in the morning with like these notes here. So yeah.
No, that's great. It sets intentions, and you know, today, right, it's been a long day, and I've gone from, you know, getting up at like sort of 6, you know, here, and getting to the gym, doing that workout, doing all of that stuff, and then going to do some of the business things that I need to do to grow this brand and grow this podcast, and then doing these interviews and prepping and doing all these sort of different things. And it's been nonstop. So I definitely relate to when there's multiple things that are right there in front of you and sometimes not being able to start. And I also relate to, and I like the way you put it, having sort of like going through, like, if I didn't get through a day and get a lot of stuff done in that day, all right, what does tomorrow look like?
Yeah.
And I try to accomplish one important thing. So this morning, looking at that whole list, and I keep a calendar that has these times blocked off, and that calendar was very, very filled up. And I was like, all right, let me get the gym out of the way. And having that momentum started of, okay, I feel good, whatever the first thing is. I feel good that I've accomplished that. And now from there, let me do some of these other things that I need to do. And I start developing momentum. And, there was one or two cancellations that happened that I'm going to eventually have to get back to later. But I know that I accomplished 1 to 2 to 3 important things that are on that list. And I can feel like, okay, I've done well in the day. And in the evening, then I'll look back and say, all right, what's tomorrow look like? How many things do I have to do that next day? Not to get overwhelmed, because, on a Monday, I think at times, and I'm a volume guy when it comes to how I work, right? When I'm doing interviews and things, on a Monday, I might have 18 interviews scheduled for the week. So I'm going, I have a day job as well, so combining both of those things. So I might look through like, all right, what sort of preparation do I need to do? And, do I have questions ready for these guests? Do I have images from them? Have I confirmed that they're going to do it? And it's a lot of different subtasks that are under each one of these interviews. And it can feel overwhelming when that week starts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. A lot of this is just finding ways to like make ourselves not, hate ourselves when we're going to sleep, basically.
Right.
Honestly, like a lot of this is like, just spend 15 minutes doodling something, you go to sleep feeling, I did something, I'm prepared, So a lot of it is psychological, a lot of it is like, some of it is actually material, but some of it is like finding ways to like, I don't know, cope with how kind of difficult and exhausting it can be, like working in these spaces that we're working in, and finding ways to like keep ourselves motivated and keep ourselves creative, and balancing like the logistics of like all these different things we're doing and stuff. So but I think it's a constant work in progress. I feel like my answer will be totally different next year. Maybe next year I'll be like, it's terrible advice to say just sit down and start. Like that's so stupid. You need to have some like, some process to it, and here's what I do. But right now it just feels like I just need to sit down and begin, and
Well, we'll have this documented so you can come back and look at it like, all right, I said this last year, I was wrong.
Every year. Yeah. We should do this every year and see how things are evolving. Like boyhood or something.
But I think the thing to add on before I move to this next question is, I think part of it has to do with this comparison thing that happens. You start looking back at, different artists, different writers, and what their sort of output was creatively. It's not the same as people pursuing creativity. Like we look at those creators from the past and folks that have done really great work, and I know you're a film guy. We look at, like folks who've done work, and you're like, you did this movie over the course of 3 years. And I'm trying to crank this stuff out, every day and make sure it's good and make sure it represents me well. And that's that sort of difference or what have you. And I think if you look at some of the people that we admire creatively, if they were put in sort of this climate, whether it's, this thing on social media, if you always have to be creating, I don't know if it's going to be the same.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not sure if like that's a positive like evolution for culture overall. In terms of just like this, I think the everything has like a much quicker expiry date.
Yeah.
And everything like I get it, because as an artist, like my dream would be to spend like 6 months working on a picture book, and then it comes out and it's this document or this piece of art that like lasts a long time, but that like doesn't pay very well. So I need to like also make art for someone's social media account, and they post it, and then a day later that post is like pushed all the way down in the timeline. And it's the volume of work that you need to produce now to like survive is like it's intense. For sure. It's just a different atmosphere, and the volume of content out there that you and I had to compete with is like
Hmm.
way more than it used to be for in those times. Same with music, same with images, same with everything. Just there's we're in an attention economy now where we need to like you need to be like, hey, look at us, we're doing something really cool here. Check this out.
Yeah.
And as we're saying that, there's like 1,000 people standing on either side of us doing the exact, not the exact same thing, but waving in the exact same way and being like,
Hmm.
hey, look at us. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like artists that we admire in past generations didn't have to like contend with as much.
No, 100%. You know,
Yeah, which is why there's like this blurring effect, right? So you think of, let's just pick like whatever, 1985, and you can think of like 10 classic movies that stick out. And
mhm.
if you think of 2005, there's probably like 40 movies because there's just so many more movies in that year, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And we look at the finances around it, right? Like I really get caught on when we get into conversations around like movies and film. I do a movie review podcast outside of this. I'm very invested in that sort
Oh
of
shit, that's so cool.
yeah. I'll send it your way. And
Yeah.
it's funny, like when you hear about like this movie was a failure because it didn't make this amount of money. And it's like, yeah, but was
Yeah.
the movie good? And those conversations shift, or despite it sitting for so long and some of the issues folks may have about representation in the movie. But when you look at the latest Avatar movie, I
Hmm.
remember some of the projections were if it doesn't make 2.5 billion, it's a failure, it's a
Yeah.
flop, it's going to lose money. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're not even talking of hundreds of millions now, we're talking billions. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, but is the
But to
movie
be
good?
fair to, yeah, true. But that expectation, the box office expectation, which is genuinely like insane, because okay, I don't want to get into the numbers, but saying it should be in like the top 8 highest grossing films ever made to be a profit was a thing that James Cameron said. And when I heard that, I was like, what? Like, why are you saying this? But the crazy thing is it happened.
Yeah.
And then it overshot the, yeah. But yeah, it's a, yeah, again, not a great thing for film. By the way, I like that film a lot, Avatar 2, honestly. But I'm saying like it's not a great direction for culture to go where these
Mhm.
budgets have gotten so big and the expected return is so big.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, films can either only exist on streaming because they're too small to release theatrically, or they need to be these like huge, like like tent poles that make like $2 billion to be profitable, and yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and
Mm.
you have those instances where they become tax write-offs and assets and what have you, like the yeah. So
The
yeah,
Batgirl situation, yeah, shit, man.
that
Yeah,
don't know what to say. So
yeah.
I want to dive into sort of the cadence, right? Like how often are you picking up projects? How often are you working just to kind of set that
Mhm.
stage? Because I'm podcasting like every day, and multiple times a day.
Wow.
So how often
That's
are you working on something?
it's super like variable.
Sure.
So for like Talk Easy is there, right? I'm working on that podcast, so that's like one portrait a week. So that's already like about 2 to 3. No, 3 days is like if it's a complicated portrait, but normally like 2 days of painting per week. In addition to that, it just depends on if I'm working on a picture book or not. If I'm working on a picture book, I kind of put everything else aside for some time because that's like that's like my passion and that's like a creative pursuit. And if I don't have like a big color picture book I'm working on, then I'm just taking like anything that comes my way. So it's super variable. It really depends. There are times when I'm really like relaxed and I have a lot of time to hang out with friends and family.
Sure.
But for example, the last 2 weeks I've just been wrapping up a picture book. I have like just not been seeing anyone basically because I've been like in the thick of it. It varies. But one thing is I try not to work more than 5 hours a day, honestly.
Gotcha.
Because yeah, because in college I overworked, and for years after that I was like just like diving into projects and being nocturnal and like I would have backache, but I would push through it and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to chill. I think if I keep 4 to 5 hours a day, that's good. That's enough. And yeah, so in terms of like the week, it's basically I don't want to be too busy. I want to like what I'm doing. I don't want to start resenting my job because I burn myself out, which kind of happened in the middle there. Yeah.
Yeah. I recognize that, and yeah, I'm trying to ease off of it. So as I look at the output I had for 2022, so the whole production, right? I put out 300 podcasts of the Truth in This
Oh
Art, this
wow.
podcast, and
Wow.
I put out probably another 20 of the movie review podcast that I do, and countless other like responsibilities related to that stuff. And as I looked at what 2023 is going to bring, I was like, I'm cutting that number down to at least a half, because you burn
Yeah.
yourself out, and it's fun, and I'm chasing it. But at a point, you
For
get to
sure.
you
For
get to
sure.
those spots where you're like, all right, and I like the way you said that. Like, I don't want to resent it. I don't want to resent what I'm passionate about, the thing that I love. I love having these conversations, and I don't want the quality to go down too, because I've talked too much, or I've been in too many conversations, or I've had too many back to back.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So planning out that sort of time and those breaks. And I did, at the end of last year, I did a panel discussion. Well, I did a discussion where I was like the featured guest or what have you. And I'm sharing, and the people of the Q&A portion, people are asking me, when are you going to take a break? They could see the output, and they knew like, yeah, you need to take a break. You need to plan some time to take away. So yeah, definitely relate.
Yeah. No, for sure. We like I mean, my friends say similar things to me, like where they're like, "What are you doing when you're taking a break?" And that's like, I think it was late last year when I realized that I hadn't traveled in 4 years. I'm not a huge travel fan in any case, but 4 years of not like taking like, I mean, it's not like I was working every single day. I have, like I said, a laid back calendar, but just 4 years of not taking a step away from, your regular routine
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. Part of why I don't feel like traveling is because of my dogs, but it's also because of work and stuff. So I just took 3 days off in October last year. Went on a trip with my best friend, and that was crazy. Just to not do, you know, just to wake up one morning and not have anything to do for the first time in years was amazing. And I was like, yeah, I need to do that a little more. I think we need to, as artists, pursue what we're pursuing, but also be like kind to ourselves, because often no one else is going to be, So yeah, we need to look out for that. We need to have our own backs. Yeah.
I'm trying to, as this year, definitely committing to putting, blocking off time. Like, all right, I'm going to record interviews for this 2-month period, and then I'm going to take a month off where I'm barely doing anything creative or prepping up, but not really doing interviews, and then coming back for, a couple more months and having these sort of planned breaks. That's the thing that I've gotten, because that's the only way you can really keep the stuff fresh. And, I hadn't traveled in a while up until recently. And I think being able to travel, and I like to travel because I think it shifts perspective. You can only go to the same coffee shop so many times, you know what I mean? And being able to shift that, it gives you new ways of thinking, seeing new things. And again, going back to the sort of exploration example we were discussing a little bit earlier. So I want to talk about the Talk Easy Pod. Like, how did that gig come about? And if you will, what sort of considerations are you making when you're illustrating like a portrait? Like, someone sends you so talk about the process I got. And then we can go from there.
So Sam Fragoso and I we used to write like film reviews, which used to get they weren't film reviews, but like articles about films that used to be published on Roger Ebert's website.
Nice.
And we were invited to his film festival in Champaign, and that's where we met. I think the two of us we shared this distinction of being the youngest of his correspondents on his website.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, we started. I think he might be younger than me actually, so he's probably the youngest. But yeah, between the two of us, we were the youngest. And yeah, I think we talked very briefly, and then kind of that's it. And then like 2 years later, he emailed me about doing some artwork for some things that he was working on, and then we did some of that, and then it kind of led to Talk Easy, where
That's
he messaged saying, "Hey, I'm getting this guest on. Can you paint him?" And this was, I hadn't done a like realistic portrait at the time.
Yeah.
This was in 2016, and I just passed out of college, and I was like, okay, cool. Let me try painting this face and see what happens. And then the next week he was like, hey, can you do like this other person? I said, okay, cool. And now we're here 6 years and 250 plus portraits later, where we have like this like streamlined thing going,
yeah,
which we're still like working out in terms of like timelines and stuff. But it's a pretty well-oiled machine at this point, you know.
love it.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what sort of
yeah.
what's-
Yeah, I'll tell you about the process.
Yeah, please.
So it used to be I would have like a Google Doc of like all the guests and stuff,
Mhm.
and I would just go on Google and I'd be like, I like this picture. This one has good lighting, and I'm just gonna paint this one. And I wouldn't even like run the pictures by them. This was like years ago, yeah.
Nice.
At some point they're like, hey, we'd also like to like, you know, have some hand in picking the pics. And I was like, okay, cool. And then later on it was like, hey, I think the guests would be more comfortable if they could pick the pictures. So yeah, it just like it's evolved. Right now how it is the guest submits a picture through their team,
Sure.
a reference image, and I generally would be able to work with that. Sometimes it's like some guest sets of like dog shit images, dude. It's like it's like flatly lit. It's low resolution. There was one guest recently who sent a picture of a picture, and it was like a WhatsApp. It was just so bad. It was so tiny.
It's
So
really
yeah,
funny.
and sometimes if they're insistent on working with these, I will like have to like do some like compositing thing, not compositing, like in my brain compositing, where I like pull up 3 images of them in high resolution, and I have this one like tiny picture that they want to use, and I need to like make it work. Yeah.
No, thank you
Yeah.
for that. That was really funny. So in being responsible for sort of the visual component, the portraits and all, and some of the biggest
Yeah.
names that come onto the pod, you know, and that are in arts and culture, recently having Kehinde Wali on and David Sedaris and Jonathan
Yeah.
Majors, you really capture the essence of these folks and these portraits
Oh,
or what
thank
have
you.
you. So bravo to you. It's really, really good work. Have you ever
Thank you.
run into like an opportunity, like, well, have you ever encountered an instance where they're like very demonstrative, like, I didn't like that. Here's another one. Redo it, please.
I don't think we've had any redos just because there's so little time. Like
Right.
it goes out, and once it's out, it's out. I don't get a lot of direct feedback from the people, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't really know. There has been like a lot of praise for sure. But yeah, there have been guests. I think I can think of like maybe 4 guests out of 200 plus who have like explicitly stated that they didn't like the portrait, and I think it even kind of affects their decision to share the episode or not, right? Because that portrait is
Sure.
right at the head of it. So yeah, but this was like I don't think this happens anymore because they select the pictures now, so
Yeah.
they should like the portrait because it's pretty close, you know. Yeah, I don't want to name any names or anything. Yeah.
That is for the post podcast.
Nice.
It's they sent over the marketing image, and you know, I may or may not have had a co-host in a previous podcast who would send me over at your aforementioned dog shit images, and then expect me to work magic, with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you sent a terrible picture. I don't know what to tell you. And
Yeah.
it's just like, we can't change certain things. You look how you look, but if you're sending a goofy face, that's what we're going to animate. I work with the animator,
sure.
and it's like, have some, credence and consideration for this is a reference, so ultimately it's going to look like this.
Yeah, but like I said, it's a well-oiled machine. At this point, the people at Talk Easy, they like when they get the image, they know like whether it's going to work or not. So they don't even like send it to me and they ask me. At this point, like they're aware like, hey, this is too low res. the lighting is not very good, etc., etc. Like initially it was like, we were like figuring it out, but at this point,
Sure.
like, yeah, they totally get what I need and I get what they need. Um,
That's
there
great.
was a point where I got down this like this. I started adding a lot of texture to my paintings, and I would overdo it, and I was making everyone look old and wrinkly. And they'd be like, "Hey, can you like cool it with the textures? It looks very stylish, but these are people's faces." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I get it. You're right." And and then I internalized that, and so now I don't do that by mistake again. And conversely, they understand, like, like, hey, this reference image isn't sharp enough. Can we ask them for another one before we
Yeah.
approach Krishna? So yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't even started my portrait for this Sunday, and we're recording this on it's Friday for me already, so I have 2 days now.
Well, let me hurry up and get you off here.
No. I'm just saying. What I'm saying is, like, sometimes it really gets down to the wire. In this case, because I was working on that book, which I just submitted a children's book. Yeah. So now I need to sit down and paint this. Yeah.
So I got one last real question, and I have a few rapid fire questions for you. And
yeah, sure.
so this last real question goes like this: if given the opportunity, which creative person, whether living or deceased, would you like to work with, and why?
It's this. This is a hard one for me because on one hand, my answer is kind of no one, because I'm not very collaborative. And no, it's not. It's partly that I'm not collaborative, but it's mostly that like as soon as you ask that question, I'm like thinking of all the great artists that I admire, and I feel like I'm not adequate enough to work with them yet. Like I'm thinking, ooh, I'd love to work with Steven Spielberg, but then I'm like, wait, but what could I contribute to a Spielberg production? But you know what? I feel like I would love to work with George Miller on a picture book.
Nice.
Like when I think of George Miller, when I think of there are segments in Happy Feet and Mad Max Fury Road and even 3,000 Years of Longing. Like there's a the quality to them that I feel like even though they're like these epic sagas,
Sure.
there's something about them that feels like a storybook or a fairy tale. And yeah, I feel like if he wrote a manuscript for a picture book, I would just take it, no matter what it was, and I would try to work with it. Yeah, I think George Miller picture book is what I'm saying.
But let's manifest it. Let's put that out there.
For sure.
So thank you for answering the real questions, and now we're going to move into a few rapid fire ones for you. And I'm going to start off with this is kind of a softball. Remember, brevity is key because it's rapid fire.
Okay.
Share one random fact about you. This is just me collecting data at this point. I heard dogs. I heard this is where I went to school. I was going to be.
Person. Yeah, I'm a crazy dog person. There's one dog sleeping on my bed, one dog sleeping on the floor here. As soon as I get out of here, I'm going to walk into like 8 other dogs that I know. Yeah, I'm a dog lover. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Can you share a uncommon source of inspiration that kind of goes into your work? Like, was there a time where you were taking a walk and you're like, you know what, I can put this into a children's book or what have you?
Yeah. My most recent book was all that. Was literally like I'm walking my dogs and I would find something and I would take a picture of it and it would literally end up in the book. Yeah. I don't know if that answers that.
No, it does.
An uncommon source of inspiration.
It does. Like, I remember taking this walk. And I was in Texas for doing some interviews, and super hot, super crazy. It was like 106 degrees every day. I was sweating, and I started bringing a notepad with me because I was listening to the audiobook of Steal Like an Artist, and I was like, let me always keep like a notepad with me because it's one of the things that comes up in it. And I'm walking, and I see a goofy bumper sticker that says, "Art is the new magic." And I just wrote that down.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this is going to come up. So when I did an interview later that day, just off the top of the dome, as I'm riffing and improvising, I asked that question. It was a source. Let's see.
Yeah.
Name a memorable moment that has happened in your sort of art career over the last couple of years.
I don't know if this is my art career, but it's a creative thing that. So I also like to do these like supercuts and edits and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did a bunch of videos on YouTube, which 2 of them went viral, which was really, really awesome. One was a Superman and Gravity mashup.
Nice.
And the second one was I did a mashup of Mad Max and Star Wars. I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but the Mad Max Star Wars one, I got an email from someone at Lucasfilm that told me that Kathleen Kennedy saw it and loved it, which was so
Nice.
cool. Like, yeah, that's like one of the brightest, happiest moments, and it's just something I've never talked about before or told anyone. Yeah,
That's really great. I'm happy you got
Yeah.
that. So this is the last one for you. And, since you're a movie guy, I got to ask you this, and it's going to suck. The question's going to suck. If there was one movie that you had to watch for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh shit.
I know.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's the one that's that's the one that everyone hates. That's the one that's like I think it might be the most actively racist Hollywood film I've ever seen. It's racist against it's like me, my country. It was shot in Sri Lanka, masquerading as India, because our government said, "Hey, you can't shoot this here. This is obscene." And I think it was banned over here for like 20 years. But it's just it's just got the best action I've ever seen in a movie. And I love it. Yeah. It's a nightmare. It's terrible. I cannot believe grown men made that film.
Now I'm gonna watch it tonight.
It's so good. It's so good. On one hand, you're like, I can't believe grown men thought this was like appropriate. And on the other hand, you're like, I can't believe grown men could be so like childlike in their innocence that they could make something so like fun and goofy. It's terrible. They should be ashamed, and I love it.
That was such a great answer. Oh, so that's pretty much it for the podcast. And I want to thank you for coming onto the podcast. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell listeners where they can check you out, website, social media, anything that you want to share in the final moments. The floor is yours.
Just my Instagram. I mean, in terms of the social media handles, I don't really use anything else. That's at Krishna Bala Shenoi. Where I share Instagram stories of my dogs, and the posts are just about my art. Anything to share? I just want artists to be kind to themselves. Just take it easy. There's so much bullshit out there. There's and now on social media we feel this like pressure to post more. We feel a pressure to create more. We see other artists doing like we can see what everyone else is doing, and so then there's also this whole kind of competitive thing that pops up. Just want everyone to chill and just do what they need to do, obviously, to make ends meet, because we live in this this shitty capitalist culture. But within those constraints, just find moments of grace in your own life, and just take it easy.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well said. So for Krishna Bala Shenoi, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, community in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for it.